Yeah, you might as well jump off of unemployment, right? Nobody wants to be on. Well, I won't say nobody. I mean, maybe there are some people who want to be on unemployment. But I actually think that all else being equal, most people like working. There's a certain fulfillment in working most of the time, a certain dignity in work. I truly believe that. But I'm not here to judge you. I'm just here to talk about this very interesting new plan that Governor Polis signed an executive order to implement yesterday called the Colorado Jumpstart. And it's a kind of thing, as I talked about yesterday, that recognizes that incentives matter. And perhaps instead of paying people a bunch of money to not work, maybe it would make sense to pay them to get back to work. Joining us to talk about it is Joe Barela. He heads up the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. Joe, thanks for making time for us.
Sure, Ross. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, and I like this idea. Were you involved much in the design of the plan?
Actually, we've been talking about Colorado. We had gone through a period early this year where, we were slow in coming back, and all of a sudden, with the increase in vaccinations and people feeling a little bit better about opening up, there was a turn overnight of positions available in Colorado. And so we know that there are good reasons for people to remain cautious about returning to work for health reasons or childcare reasons, but there's also a great opportunity for people to return to work that are unemployment. And so we said, let's incentivize those people that are returning to work quickly. And so we said, hey, how can we make sure that, we know there's an expense to people going to work. Sometimes there's a delay in their first check from 2 weeks to a month. Let's incentivize them by when they go off unemployment and are working 32 hours or more a week, let's give them a return and a retention bonus.
Right. So I talked a little bit about the requirements to be eligible. They're actually quite simple. Maybe you can just go through them quickly.
Sure. As of this week, when you go into the system and you previously were on unemployment, you have to certify that you did return to work at least 32 hours a week. Once you do that, tell us where you're working and what your wages are. If you stay in that and you don't go back into the system and basically recertify and ask for unemployment for 4 weeks, you'll be eligible for half of the $1,600 payment that's available in May. If you stay there for 8 weeks and don't come back into the system and show that you're requesting unemployment benefits, you'll get the remaining $800. And that's in May, a total of $1,600 return to work incentive. If you return to work in June, it goes down to $1,200. We put that in place because we want to encourage people to take advantage of the over 100,000 jobs we have available throughout the state of Colorado as quickly as possible, and so that's the tiered system we put in place.
So I realize the accounting and the math side of this is a little bit complicated, and actually not all of it is the stuff that your department has to deal with. But I'm wondering what your kind of back of the envelope math looks like in terms of return on investment for Coloradans. And I know you're not spending money out of the same fund that's saving money by doing this, but just broadly speaking, if the government spends X, then what do you think that saves the unemployment insurance fund?
Sure, we know. For example, let's say in May, if we have 10,000 people go to work and take advantage of the $1,600 bonus, that's $16 million. If those 10,000 people remained on unemployment for the first 4 weeks, that's $28 million that we would pay out in unemployment insurance. And so the savings is tremendous. And really, we really made this to Colorado residents if you're receiving state unemployment insurance or extended benefits. We really want to show employers that if people return to work to those W-2 jobs, it does save the trust fund money. And, in the trust fund, we have been borrowing since August of 2020. And so we want to get people back to work, give employers a little bit of break on paying out and borrowing money to make those unemployment insurance benefits moving forward.
Right. And there are other aspects of this that also make good sense, right? By, of course, requiring people to stay in the job for a while. That's an obvious requirement just on its own merits, but also by having people stay in the job, it pushes people to stay in the job out close to the time when the federal unemployment bonus would end, so there would be a lot less incentive to return to unemployment. So that's a good thing. And I wonder also, Joe, about if somebody did this, and did it for a couple months and then left and tried to collect from you guys again, that would probably give you a pretty good place to look to say, hey, you're supposed to be looking for your job. You can't just intentionally quit just to get unemployment money, right?
That's correct. And, we, at the beginning of the pandemic, we loosened a little bit of the job search requirements. But as of February 1st, we put back into place, there's requirements for anyone receiving unemployment to be, if they're able and available, they need to be looking for work. They need to do a minimum of job search activities, and they can't refuse employment. Just this past, in April, we put in stricter rules that if an employer feels that someone is not showing up to an interview, if they refuse a job without good reason, if they don't follow through with pre-employment activities, if that employer lets us know, we will shut down those cases today. So there are a lot of reasons for people to return to work. There are a lot of reasons for safety reasons, childcare reasons, I mentioned before, that people can still remain home. But we really want to let people know on unemployment, if there are jobs out there, if it's safe for you to return to work, if you're healthy, we need you to go to work, and you need to do what's required by law. If you're on unemployment insurance, you need to be available and able to return to work.
All right, so a very basic logistical, almost mechanical question. If a person is on unemployment now and was for at least 1 week during the relevant period from the end of March to the middle of May, and now they want to take advantage of this, how do they actually do it? Like online, where do they go? What do they do?
Yeah, so they'll go on to, like they have been for weeks, recertifying weekly for unemployment. They'll log into their MyUI Plus account. There'll be a question for them. Let us know, have you returned to work full-time during the reporting period, which is the last week? If they check yes on that, then they'll be prompted, would you like to participate in Colorado Jumpstart program? If they select yes, they just need to move forward. They'll ask, where did they return to work and what was their wage? That's all we're asking. They need to stay... we'd ask them if they go back in the system and recertify for weeks, or say, hey, I need to go back to unemployment because I lost my job or my hours were not up, that would nullify the incentive payment. They need to stay in 32 hours a week of employment for 4 weeks to get the half of the bonus, and then to get the remaining half, they have to get to the 8-week period at 32 hours a week or more.
Right. Folks, if this might apply to you, if you return to full-time work by May 29th, you can get $1,600. If you return to work between May 30th and June 26th, you can get $1,200. Joe, I've got one listener question on a slightly different topic, and I was curious about it, too. And this might seem a little like old news, but I never really heard the answer. So we know that across the country there are all kinds of fraudulent unemployment claims, and you guys did the best you could to deal with them. At some point, there was some number of millions of dollars of overpayment here in Colorado, and the state, I don't know, you, the governor, whoever, decided not to ask people for money back. Now, I don't think that was for fraud. I want to make sure we're clear. But what exactly was that you didn't ask for the money back, and why didn't you ask for the money back?
Right, and most of that is in relationship to the pandemic programs that came out last spring, and the confusion in some of the rules that came out. So there was an issue with net income versus gross income for our gig workers that file 1099s. And so if there was a confusion in the question, the guidance that came out at no fault of that claimant, we are going to waive those. We are not going to require overpayments on those. And so there won't be a charge to the 1099 will be zeroed out. Where there is fraud, and we're investigating that, we will not waive those payments out, and there will be overpayments that we will go into collections with. And so, in March, we reported that we were just about a little over 40,000 fraudulent claims that were paid out, about $20 million. That number will go up as we continue to find that there are fraudulent claims in the system. Remember, this is stolen PII that these criminals are using, and that's what's required to put in information in the system. We don't know what's coming into our system till it's in there. Mm-hmm. Once we know there's a trend or a fraud ring or scheme going on, we can stop that, but it's only after the fact. So unfortunately, money does go out of the system. A good portion of this was from federal funds, not the state trust fund, but as we converted over and at the end of last year, we saw the federal programs and the CARES Act coming to an end, those criminals shifted over to the state unemployment system, and we know we'll have losses from that. But, we didn't have any fraud triggers going into this last last spring, we have over 60 that we run analytics nightly on every case, new cases and continuing cases, to see if there's something suspicious, and we'll put a hold on those. We've implemented ID.me that really helps cut down fraudulent, because we want to make sure that the person filing a claim is actually who they say they are. And so that's stopping a lot of the attempts coming in the front door. And so we're doing everything we can, but unfortunately we know that because the system was just under surge last year, some fraud went out. And, they're still working at us. Every night we have fraudulent claims that are put on hold because of suspicious activity.
Joe Barela is the director of Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. Thanks for your time and all the great information as always, Joe. Appreciate it.
Sure, Ross. Let's help get Colorado back to work. Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Glad to. I like this Colorado Jumpstart program. We'll talk about it more later, but I hope you found that useful. We'll be right back